Good morning, everybody. This is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission. Today, we are reviewing on-ramp 2024 fellowship proposals for the 2024 cohort. I am Jordan Adams, the Artist Services Program Manager for the Indiana Arts Commission. We have today with us Victory Sampson, the current programs and grants intern for the IAC, joining us as co-moderator. And we have Connie Brom, Director of Marketing and Communications, as our tech help. Today is Wednesday, August 14th, 2024. The panelists are meeting on Zoom and the public is observing on YouTube.
At this time, we would like the panelists to introduce themselves, stating their name, occupation, and where they're currently located. And we'll go ahead and start with Martha.
Hi, I am Martha Piskuskas. I'm a program director at the Maine Arts Commission, currently in Augusta, Maine.
Awesome. Thank you, Martha. Ellen, would you like to go next?
Sure. My name is Ellen Mensch. I am an artist, educator, and exhibition coordinator for ArtLink Contemporary Gallery in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and that's where I'm based.
Let's go ahead with Corey.
Hi, I'm Corey Griggs. I'm a local poet, author, and healer in Ingalls, Indiana.
Thank you, ma'am. And then we'll have Mike.
Mike Barclay, art consultant with 60 on Center, and I'm located in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. This panel is designed to gather feedback that will help the applicant strengthen their fellowship project to advance their career. The discussion will also help IAC staff identify any important modifications applicants may be required to make to their fellowship project before moving forward. I will announce the application we will review. I'll ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide advice to strengthen the fellowship project, focusing on the evaluation criteria from their perspective. Panelists, please note that the applications do not need to be recapped since all panelists have read it. Just provide your comments. After the first reader is finished, I will ask the second reader to present any new, additional, or differing comments. We are not looking for a consensus. We want the applicant to receive excellent advice from the different perspectives that panelists bring to the table. After the second reader has finished, I will open the discussion for final comments. Remember, in the interest of time, we are only looking for new, additional, or differing viewpoints. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, that panelist will be placed in the virtual waiting room while the application is discussed. We have none today, so that won't be needed. However, finally, once the application has been discussed by the full panel, we ask the panels to update their comments in the online system. It's common for recommendations to change because of this broader discussion. These changes save automatically. All right, are there any questions? All right, let's begin. And we'll start with our first applicant, on-ramp 2024, London. The first reader is Mike.
My notes when reviewing this application, and I'm going to summarize them because they are a little lengthy and I don't want to take up too much time, but in general interest, my first impression was I think the project summary needs to make a statement of what's being produced and why it needs funding. I was reading a lot of aspirational dreams and sentences and ideas here. And I wanted it to feel like it was direct to the point. My first comments that I was making was I was confused at first on what the real ask is. Was it a funding of a literary magazine or a board game? It took me a while during the process of reading this application to understand that this was funding for a board game. And that was the object that was being produced. So it felt to me that the direct comment should have been at first leading towards the production of this board game, why this board game is necessary, what this board game will do, who the audience is, and why it should be funded was the first things I wanted to read up front, as versus reading a lot of aspirational ideas. I love that enthusiasm, and the enthusiasm does come through in the entire process of what London has written, but I felt the direct ask was missing. I thought there was a great "what's the goal for this project" explanation. It was immediately precise and direct to the question of launching a beta testing of the game. But my comment was, now take that attitude to your other answers, answer those questions directly, and then tell me how that answer is supported with actions, reasons, and results. London is very good at sharing the story and the experiences, but I do urge you to stay focused on the question that's being asked. It's hard to write about yourself to others because you're too emotionally involved and every little detail seems so important, but just be aware that you might be wordy in your comments and you're including too much detail, that your message or the ask that is the message in this is getting lost. The only career goal you listed is a reintroduction to the literary scene. That's a great goal, but what is that to you? What is that you want to be? What does this mean? As a reader, I didn't understand why that was a goal for you, why you were not part of the literary scene or felt you were not part of the literary scene currently. So I would love a little more detail on how that will play out. I do commend you because the game does sound fun and it's obviously a passion for you. Feasibility. Your timeline is very intense and has a lot of large tasks. I don't see areas in this timeline where you're building in space for when things don't go as planned. I do understand that the time frame is short for these kinds of projects, and so I would take into consideration that you do need some flexibility built in for production when things don't go as planned, when you're working with a manufacturer and designers and things like that. I also was curious, have you identified a manufacturer and what the cost of the production for the prototype game would be? That wasn't explained in here. Is 3 months really actually enough time to design, proof, and create a prototype with a graphic designer for this project? I personally do not know. I've never made a board game, but I was just curious if there were other, is this based on knowledge and research with other people and actually discussions with a manufacturer? I'm not sure $2,000 will support all these tasks that you have identified in creating the game: the copy editor, graphic designer, fabrication, production. I understand that merchandise is one of the ways to create profit to help finance this, but merchandise will cost money up front to produce because you have to make the items first before you can sell them. So I was a little curious about that. And then the profit margins on merchandise actually are not very high. So I didn't know if you were looking at other avenues to increase your funding through investors, additional grants. That knowledge would have been nice to hear, that you were doing other research and looking at other avenues to finance this project. I do commend you amazingly for paying yourself. Artists are very bad about writing grants and not paying themselves for their work. So I do really commend you on paying yourself. I think that's very important. You were doing the work and you need to be paid. Again, I did question about how much the prototype would cost, because it seems in your breakdown here in the budget that you have $100 budget for the prototype, and I just feel that that might be a little small, or that could be limiting on how many options or alterations you might be able to perform before you create the prototype that you're really happy with. So I would wonder if that could be increased more, so that you would allow yourself more creativity in the production. Gaming is a massive industry, and knowing people who've actually created a game and sold it, packaging goes a long way and can be extremely costly. So I was just curious, again, going back to this money invested in prototypes, have you researched these costs? Can you give us information that helps back up what the production value is, how much it would cost, why this is important in the steps? I think that would really reinforce your ask. And I love the idea of this board game, but I also was curious about if you've thought about other formats such as digital, since that is a big industry as well. And then in my evaluation, I wrote that I love that you've identified the core at the conference, who is the targeted audience, and you have a partnership with this conference. That's great marketing and a great avenue. And I mean, you nailed the target audience. But I was also, and I think they're the perfect people to solicit feedback from. So I think you've done a great job of identifying community engagement and working into that community, and using that feedback for positive reasons. I am a little thrown by the talk of a zine in the community engagement area, as this seems more like your ask was more of a game production. So I didn't really understand why the zine was necessarily mentioned and brought back into the story, because then it took me back to the beginning when I wasn't sure if this was a literary magazine or a board game. So that zine and the literary magazine are creating some confusion for me, because you mentioned that as an overall goal of getting back into that, but then at the same time, you're talking about producing a board game. And so to me, it seems that the money specifically is being used for the board game. So I think we focus on the board game with the ask. So I think maybe lean into how you're going to take this feedback from this test audience, and you're going to use that in the production of this game. I think that's your key to your community engagement. I'm not sure that the zine to me seems more like promotional material and not so much of a community engagement aspect on that. Overall, I thought it was a great ask, and I think you have a great application so far. I just think it needs some clarity and redefinition on specifically what the ask is and what your main goals are going to be with this.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you.
Ellen.
Yeah, so Mike touched on a lot of my concerns, but I would say the zine was one of the things that I did write about in a different way in my feedback, in that if they were going to produce a zine as a form of promotion for the game, that could be listed in the expenses, rather than it sounded like it was going to be personally funded to create this zine as promotion. It also mentioned that in the zine, there would be a QR code, which would, I believe, take players to a site where they could see writing from other players that they created during gameplay. And I thought that was a really great idea. I thought that it may be more beneficial to be incorporated into the game itself, because some people may have that zine, but they may never play the game. So that could be something, the QR code, that could be added to the box itself for the game, or in a less permanent way on something like a paper slipped inside. But overall, I did think that the grant was pretty well written. I would say it does need to be a little more concise in exactly what you're asking for right off the bat, although I do appreciate the beauty and the passion that went into it as a writer. It was very well written in that way. But I thought the most incredible thing that stood out to me was just the exceptional planning behind it, in the kind of the structure of how the beta testing would be launched and tested, and then how eventually the full game would be launched as well. I thought that was a really nice structure. And one other thing in the feasibility that I don't know whether Mike mentioned or not, was just the additional $490 income that was for projected sales, I believe, which I think would need to be taken off of there unless another $490 was going to be spent in the expenses. So I think those are my only additional comments.
Thank you, Ellen. Do we have any additional or different viewpoints that would like to be added? Martha?
I want to echo what Mike said about this applicant being commended for including their time in the budget. That's incredible and also very rare. I will say that I think this person very underfunded themselves on terms of the time and whether it's going to be a cash component or actually included in the in-kind. I think the overall budget needs to reflect actually what this will take of this applicant. And so if it's in kind, great, fine, put it in kind. And I think that the amount there, 315, is a very modest, extremely modest amount. And, you know, that's what artists do, but I really recommend just including how much time you think this is actually going to take and put that in kind. The other thing I will just add is that, so the business plan, I'm sure this applicant is talking to consulting with lots of people on the development of this. I think having a team of advisors actually named in the business plan, I think anyone doing any kind of enterprise should actually have sort of a cadre of people that they tap and name them and sort of have it be a component and a firm component of the business plan. So that's worth mentioning and including that in the plan. I think those are it.
Thank you. Corey, did you have anything? Okay, awesome. Before we move forward, I will quickly touch on budget because it's not uncommon for us to touch on budget over and throughout everyone's application. And I will say that to our creatives, our entrepreneurs, the income section, the whole budget should be balanced. However, if you have anything that exceeds the $2,000 grant, that's totally fine. However, I saw a lot of people saying, if you've already received another grant or have sales from other merchandise, whatever, that's okay to include. But if it's a hope or a wish, that income section needs to include what is already concrete available. So if you're ready to fund what's outside of the $2,000, you can say, I'm gonna personally contribute to my project. But anything that is hopeful or projections would need to be removed. And so I'll work with everyone on that component as well. Okay, alrighty. So we will finalize our comments and save, and we are gonna move to our next applicant, which is On-Ramp 2024 Rodriguez. Corey is our first reader.
So I'll start just with my overall evaluation for this project. I loved reading through this. It's such a well thought out plan and project with a really beautiful timeline, a budget layout. Like, reading through it made me very excited just as a fellow artist, and even something that I would want to experience in person. I really appreciated the unique canvas idea. I think that is a beautiful way to push yourself as an artist, push yourself as a creative, and also push the viewers of this project, the people that are going to experience it, because it's a project that challenges lots of different mediums and ideas. I think that the feasibility was really well thought out. The outline, the budget, like, I could see everything clearly. I really had a hard time finding any holes in this project. It was awesome. And I think that the follow-up and post-exhibition was what stuck out to me the most. So beautiful ideas for continued growth as well as continued community engagement. The already established relationship with the public library, I feel like, leaves room for even more relationships in that way, whether it's another gallery, whether it's another public space. There's great connection and representation already there. And yeah, like, those are really all my thoughts, because this one was really well executed. So I applaud you for fully formulating all your thoughts and putting them in a way that's very digestible and is able to be actionable.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Corey. Martha?
Yes, thank you. I think that one of the best things about this is that there's a project that's very, very clear that embodies this artist's goal of, I'm looking for that, where they talk about their particular interests in art, about empathy and connection. And I think this is a great example of that. And this is a point that I think could be made to many of the applicants, is tying this very concrete, tying in better ways, this very concrete project that people are proposing to the overarching aspiration that people have. I just saw that over and over again. And I think this is another example of that, where the overarching goal is to have a studio and a space to invite others in. But this particular project is about a show that's going to be somewhere, but the links between those two, there's not a whole lot that's kind of skeletal. So if this program is about sort of looking at the 5-year plan, I want to see more of what are the steps to that. So I do think that this applicant has laid out what needs to happen: a business plan, marketing plan, funding plan, et cetera. That's really good. They're clear that those are things that are needed. So just tying those things together. That's the main piece there. I love the idea of mousetraps as canvas. I think that's quite unique. They said they had some examples of that. I didn't see them. It would have been great to have included images in there. If they hadn't done it before, that's one thing, but it sounded like they had, so it would have been great to see some examples of that. I think that the biggest point that I want to focus on is about community engagement. A lot is proposed, and that's really great that they're thinking about that, but there needs to be more specifics about how they're going to be collecting information. And it was unclear to me whether they're gathering information, how they're gathering information ahead of time to inform the creation of the work, whether people are actually creating it with the artist. How are they reaching those people? Are they doing small gatherings? Are they asking individuals? And what questions are asked to elicit the ideas for the painting? And then also, they talked about having surveying people. In what ways were they going to do that? An online survey is not a great way to gather information, I will just say. There's the sector that I've done some research on this, and the sector that actually answers surveys are older women over 50. So though, if that's who you want, great, but you have to look into other ways of gathering information. So getting creative about on the spot kind of feedback, like having a blank wall with markers for people to write what they feel or think about it in addition to the piece itself, or having somebody hanging around and going up and recording some feedback. Just there's lots of ways to gather that information that I think needs to be fleshed out more. And I do want to have more information about how the artist is gathering information in the beginning to inform the work. They're terrific starting vision statement. I think that's a really great anchor, and that can lead the work quite a bit. I think those are my comments.
Thank you so much. Do we have any additional comments? Go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah, so my main concern, and maybe I missed something in the timeline, but my main concern with this proposal was that it seemed as though it was all going to take place prior to the start of the grant being funded, September 6th of this year. I believe, unless they were talking about 2025, but it made it sound like they were talking about starting this project July 1st of this year and finishing by September 6th of this year. So I don't know that any of it would qualify for funding, since I believe nothing is supposed to be started prior to that. But like I said, I might be misunderstanding. I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but it does also then up at the top, as far as project start and end, the end date says October 31st, 2024. Which is not listed in the timeline. In the timeline, it ends September 6th. So that's my main concern about the whole thing. The only other kind of less important topic that I noted, which doesn't necessarily have to pertain to this particular project, because I think they're already well underway on this project, but I know that part of the biggest message for the exhibition seemed to be about recycling and sustainability, which I just pointed out that I thought might be more, like in the future, more prevalent from using recycled materials and not purchasing, over 1,000 mousetraps. So that was just my one other little pointer for next time. I think they've already started on this project, but yeah, the timeline was my primary concern.
Anyone else? Thank you, Ellen.
Mhm.
I believe I have that noted as well. Mike?
Yeah, I agree. I was not getting sustainability and reuse in the descriptions that I was reading. This seemed, it was purchasing new material. So I wasn't really getting that angle in the description throughout this, but I do think this is it's a very well-written grant. You clearly understand what it is you're doing. You understand your project. You understand the details of your project, how to make this project happen. And that I felt came across very clearly. I was also a little concerned about the timeline as well, being that it seemed like a lot of this was happening before the funding would be notified. You would be notified that you were receiving the funding. My only and biggest area of comment really is to deal with community engagement. I really center myself around that two-way engagement process that the Arts Commission defines. And so while I felt this is fine community engagement, I do wonder if there are ways that this could be deeper and more involved in a two-way exchange with the community. One, I think it would strengthen the work. It will also strengthen the community's reaction to the work. It will also strengthen just the number of the audience by having people participate actively in the process of creating the art. They are then invested in the display of it. They're invested in the show of it. And they're bringing friends, they're bringing the audience. So it brings more and more people and you can develop more. What I felt was really happening in here was there was one area that talked about community crafting promotional materials. And so I wasn't sure if the community is involved in the creation of the art in any way. Are they helping participate in ideas, design, the creation of the physical art that's being displayed? Or are they only strictly providing feedback after they view it? Or are they just crafting promotional material? So I would like that to be a little more defined, as in how the audience is participating and if they're participating throughout this entire project. I also was a little curious about the ways that you're soliciting information. I know you listed social media, but I do find that social media is an extremely limited audience. And I'm just sort of wondering, if you are engaging with people on social media, what is that? How are you collecting this information? Are you using it as a public forum to ask questions, or are you strictly just getting people's comments? Like, what is that? What does it look like? And how are you going to use that? Also, I was a little curious when you used the phrase continued opportunities. So what is continued opportunities, and how are you engaging with continued opportunities via social media? You do list in your area that you have in the that there's partnering organizations that are helping you fulfill diversity, but that was not clear. You're not answering the question here, but you're just stating what we already know, that these groups provide diversity, equity, and access for all. But I want to know, who are these organizations? How are they partnering with you? Are they participating in this project in some capacity? And what is that capacity? What does it look like? Also, are they providing feedback too? I just wasn't feeling the community engagement strength in this proposal very well. I understand that we're displaying art in a public manner and people are looking at it, they're viewing it, and people will provide feedback. But when I'm thinking two-way engagement, I'm thinking something a little more stronger than that. I would like to see a little more activity on your side and engaging with the community and bringing them into the work. But overall, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a nice project. I do think that the use of materials is not a truly unique way. So if there's any way that you are creating this work with reused materials, that it's very different and very special, please explain that in the story. I know it's not necessary to do, but as a curator, an arts curator, I want to know what makes you unique. I want to know what makes you special. And everyone is unique and special when they're creating art, but I want you to pull that out and tell me about that. But that's my only comments.
Thank you so much. Alrighty. Finalize any changes in your comments. And we will move to our next application. On-ramp 2024 Reagan. And our first reader is Ellen.
Yeah, so to start, I thought that this was a really great project idea, and that just the idea in general of a PDF publishing course is a fantastic way to generate income and allow them time to focus on the greater ideas mentioned in the bigger picture. I do wish, like from the very beginning of the grant proposal, that it was maybe more concise and to the point. It did take me a little bit of digging to understand exactly what this particular project goal was. I think I understood it mostly once I got to the budget and saw what was actually laid out. It did begin a lot more with in-depth like hopes for a career and like past experience in the industry, rather than like a really concise description of what the goal was for this project. I think the goal actually was only mentioned in the long-term creative business goal, actually, instead of the project goal. So I think that would be helpful first thing, just to kind of shift that into the project goal as well, rather than picking up after it's already published in the project goal. I think the project goal says that they hope to sell enough of the PDFs to, initiate further planning, but I think the project goal is actually to create the PDF itself. So that would be where I would start. But then otherwise in the goals section, they mentioned wanting to cater to those who have difficulty reading or difficulty navigating the internet. So I just wanted to throw out there that I believe you can embed audio into a PDF. And if that is an option, you could potentially add that as a way to make it a little more accessible in that way, or you could certainly add in links into each section that would take you to a video where you explain, although that would put in a little bit more work on your end into creating that PDF. But if that is truly a goal of yours to help those people, then it may be something you would want to look into. In the feasibility section, my main concern was that the income and expenses were not equal. In the expenses, there was about $3,900 of anticipated income from things like PDF sales and one-on-one sessions. But since these cannot be guaranteed or exact estimations, it would need to be considered personal contribution, and I recommend just leaving them off for now. It's probably best just balance it with the $2,000 income, since you're, I believe, planning to spend $2,000. Actually, the expenses listed were $19.99 and 93 cents. So I would recommend just adjusting that, like additional 7 cents to make it balanced. And that could easily be added to the contingency fund line item that you have, since that's just kind of I think whatever you had left over anyway. So could add that 7 cents there. My only other feasibility concern was that if you're going to be working with a graphic designer, which I believe was listed in the expenses to generate the PDF design, it may be in your best interest to have a good written contract as far as who would then own those designs, how the payment would be made, if it would be a one-time payment, or, you know, they would get a percentage of sales or anything like that. I think you might want to be very clear about if it could potentially be a popular product where that might, you know, become an issue later down the line if there wasn't any agreement. Although obviously meeting with a lawyer to write a contract or get advice about that would add quite a bit to your budget. So take that at your own discretion. And then lastly, the community engagement aspect, I would say to create more of a two-way relationship with your audience, it would be nice to have a link built into the PDF where it would take customers to a survey where they could see or give feedback, ask questions, and maybe see commonly asked questions by other customers. They could also explain in the survey what they would be interested in learning more about or learning next if you want to do future expansions on this product. So that, I believe, was all of my comments.
Thank you, Ellen. Mike?
Okay. Yeah, my first comment backs up what was previously said. I think your description is it's very lengthy, it's wordy, and I get a little lost in it. So I would like to be a little more direct in what the ask is, how you're performing it, and what you do there. You're very passionate, and I love that the passion comes through immediately. You also want to elevate and help other artists, and I think that is a great, strong message that carries through your entire project. So I think you've really thought of something great here. I did wonder a little bit about, is this information available online? Are there other people providing this service to people? What are those fees? I just wanted to know if there was a little bit of research behind this to know that there, obviously there's a need for this market, but are there other people out there doing it? And if so, how is it that you do it and you're going to do it differently and better? I would like that to come across right away. I also wondered, you talk about this PDF, publishing a PDF for a fee online, but I also wonder if there's other ways that you could diversify income here. Are there other ways that this thing could exist in other forms, other media, or is there other ways that you can additionally do it? I also was wondering about how is it that this is a one-time transaction between you and another artist, and I just wondered if there were other ways that you could develop sustaining money or income for this idea and project, because you talk about your long-term goals, which I think are fantastic, but in order to get there, you're going to need reoccurring money, and this is a one-time purchase, which means they're not coming back for anything else. So is there a way that you can stabilize this and make it a returning process for people? Or, you know, how do you'll have to always be searching out new audiences in order to create that income if it's supposed to be sustainable, to create this overarching long-term goal. So I just was wondering if there were avenues to explore that. My other question is, you know, should it strictly be on Indiana artists? Should it be Midwest regional? Should it be national? You know, I just sort of wonder about those ideas as well. I think you do, and a wonder, you're very giving, and that comes across. So I just hope you make sure that you are spending adequate time for yourself and making sure that you're developing your needs in this project and not just basing it on developing others' needs. Yeah, so I think you could tighten up the beginning section, but I do think you have an overall great idea. I was a little curious when talking about the feasibility on this. You listed graphic design as one of your skill sets in the very early beginning, but then you have it listed as hiring a separate graphic designer. And I was just curious on maybe why there was a need to hire a graphic designer if you already have those skills. And maybe that's a way that you could pay yourself. I do want to commend you on having a contingency. I think contingencies are very important, even if it's a little bit of money, but there's always unexpected costs with every project. So I think it's always good to plan ahead, to have some kind of just a little bit of a nest egg so that you're not scrambling. I wondered about the ad campaign or social media, if you're seeking professional help for that. That was listed as an expense, but I didn't know what that expense was going to be used for exactly. Let's see. Again, thinking about the steady income. And one of the other things I forgot to mention was an example of the song. The examples that were listed, they do contain profanity in the titles. And while I am not offended by those such things, there are people that would be judging and jurying those. So I do wonder if, not to say that you should censor yourself, but I do think that you should take into consideration other people's feelings or aspects of how they feel about those kinds of words being used or being given to them as an example to judge your art on. I don't want that to overshadow the quality of the work. And then I just think in the end, I do think you need to think a little bit more about what the two-way engagement means in community engagement and how you're performing that. Obviously, you're learning from musicians that you play with, and you want to help musicians as well, develop them. But I just want to, if there a way that this could be a deeper relationship, is it more than just them purchasing this PDF from you and putting their music, can you highlight them in other ways? Is this through building your own website and promoting these artists that are purchasing this from you and putting their music out there and you helping to promote their music? I just, I wanted that to be a little more of an investment of the two-way exchange. I like how you want to disseminate your information and reach your market. And I also love that you want to do follow-ups with these musicians. But you're also devoting a lot of time to building other people's careers here. And I don't see you paying yourself for that and taking the time that I think you need to do for your own personal development. So I just want you to think about that. And then possibly my last comment would be in your feasibility as well. If you're not paying yourself, perhaps that is considered an in-kind donation here. I'm not sure exactly the stipulations on how that works with the budget, but that's something I would take into consideration. And one last comment. Sorry, I have a lot of comments. I do love that you listed Sweetwater as a partner and you know them and you have a relationship with them, but I also wonder if there's other relationships that you can build too. Have you thought about music stores, guitar shops, vinyl stores, all these different areas? Maybe there's even nonprofits that are music-based as well that you could partner with to help promote your brand, receive clients that way, and maybe build the financial success you're dreaming of here. So that's my last comment.
I would say, just to add on top of your last comment about Sweetwater, because I do live in Fort Wayne where Sweetwater is, but they are also currently constructing the Pearl Street Art Center, which is music focused as well, and that will be brand new, I think owned by this Chuck Surek as well from Sweetwater. So that would be another option you could go to.
Thank you. Did anyone else have anything to add for Reagan? Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I would love to just encourage diving into copyright law a bit when it comes into publishing. There's a lot that we can miss when we are publishing, and I've seen it happen. It's happened to myself. I don't want to see it happen to other artists as well. But when especially if you want to pursue relationships with bigger entities like Sweetwater, or possibly having them use something that you created on their site or within their stores or whatever that may look like, I just want to encourage a lot of self-advocacy in your contracts, as well as make sure your copyright it's very copywritten, it's locked tight and sealed, especially to do a digital publication, people can print this. And so have that worked into your contract, as well as if it is printed, that's an additional cost, or it's some kind of language that you feel comfortable with having, and also then compensates you for your time and energy. The thing with publishing is we never know the hands that it's touching or the hands that it's reaching. So we have to be really intentional with our contracts in that way. And understanding copyright law is one of the biggest things. So use your resources, whether that is a lawyer, but just being mindful of everything that can go into this publication space.
Thank you, Corey. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. That was one of my main points as well. And I don't have as much experience as you, so that's great coming from you. But I do wonder about the wisdom of actually creating a document that would be so transferable for free amongst people, and whether instead thinking about how can you use that as a catalyst, like Mike was saying, to monetize your time and your energy. Like you're so passionate about this, and you're so energetic about how to do this and how other people can do this. So I feel like that might be a teaser, here's a little free teaser, and then connect with me, and you have that in your budget to spend, to have some one-on-one mentoring time. I wonder if that's more just thinking about, like Mike said, a website, or just other ways to sort of pull people towards you yourself, because you're the one who, I think once people get in touch with, connect with you personally, they're gonna see how well you could be of assistance to them. And I really love that that you're aware of the wide range of comfort level with computers, and that you're paying attention to what budding music artists need and where they're at, and of all different ages and abilities. And I think that's really smart, because as we know here in the Arts Commission, and I'm sure in Indiana Arts Commission as well, we have grants that we can give out, but if people aren't comfortable with the interface, then they're not even going to access it. So any ways that you can make it more accessible to people is great. I think what everyone has said is very, very useful. I'm just looking to see if there's anything that I have that hasn't really been said. I do think maybe having a beta version and testing that with people on the ground is probably going to be helpful, if that's, if you go forth with the PDF plan.
Awesome, thank you for that. We do have resources for you for pro bono lawyers to go through copyright stuff, so we can connect you with that information as well. Alrighty, anything else before we move forward? All right, finalized comments. And we will move to our next applicant, which is On-Ramp 2024 Smith. Our first reader is Martha.
Great. Okay. Just double checking on this, right? Affirm my design. What I have here is everything rings so beautifully. The goals are clear and big, yet within reach. This applicant is extremely determined. The market research is really good. And there's a personal connection, the legacy experience, the passion to see women thrive. That's all very clearly expressed and in there. I have never seen something like this project that brings this very unique, sort of a reupholstery along with self-actualization, and including the, taking something old apart, putting in new information and materials alongside the self-actualization work. I think that's incredibly imaginative, and I think you could definitely go further with that. I think including the training and employing of women to do this work, because it can be done here and there in people's homes with the right tools, is brilliant long-term goal. My major question here just around goals is, I think that the goal of revenue in a first year from this project, 25,000, is incredibly ambitious, overly ambitious. I think that you might want to take that out a few years. And when it comes to feasibility, I think you're already well on your way. The timeline's clear, plenty of vision, well-defined steps and budget. If I were in Indiana, I would want to take this course. My question is, you're going to take a class from Kim's Upholstery. How would yours be different from that? I know it's good to see how other people are doing it, but so what would make yours different? And something that's really, really critical, and I think this has to be actually a key component of your actualization of this, is online how-to classes that people are going to pay for. The video has to be excellent quality. You have to have really great production value, video, audio, lighting. You have to, it can't be a cluttered space. You have to think about all of those pieces, and it can't be with a cell phone. It has to be with professional equipment. So, and then editing. So you have to, if people are going to pay for this, it has to be, it doesn't have to take a whole lot, but you definitely have to have some practice in that. So I do think that in your budget, your video production costs are too low. Might be good for starting out, but I think sort of a ramping up into the online environment is going to take longer and more resources. I think you might need to shift what you're focusing on for the first round. You're going to want to upgrade quickly if you want to build an audience. So community engagement, you could teach a section on community engagement here. You very, very much know the folks involved that you're trying to reach. I think your partnerships that you have in mind will flourish, and to support women's ability to thrive in their economic skill development. That's also a wonderful long-term goal. I think it's going to take a little bit to get there. Like I said, I think your ambitions for this first year of revenue is, I'm not in the business, I don't know, but it seems quite high to me. I do think partnering with an entity that is doing job development and skill building with women earlier rather than later would be to your benefit, because having more people involved and engaged in what you're doing will only make it stronger. And they'll want to see you succeed. They'll want to have a place to send women, who are getting out of a crappy situation. And so they want to help you succeed. I think, yeah, I really hope that this goes further. But I do think it needs a lot more sort of foundational pieces at this stage. That's what I have.
Thank you so much, Martha. Corey?
Yeah, without being redundant, I'm going to retweet everything that Martha just said. And also, I think my main questions were about the focus group and the participants. It wasn't fully clear to me how those women will be selected or found, and giving a bit more detailing on what that could be, just for future partnerships, of having all of those questions answered for clarity, and what that outreach approach would be, and even affirming further of the production, if that's what the promotion is going to be, if that's what the outreach is going to be, having that be just super clear, I love all the details. The analytical information was super helpful for my brain and even just for wanting to be a part of the project and interested in it. I would love to see more detail about the kind of social and emotional opportunities that this work does create. Like what's the aftercare, what's the follow-up? So once all of this information is given and learned, then what? So I'd love more detailing on what that can look like long term. I think this is a super sustainable project that can live and grow and continue for a very long time. It's very much legacy building. So I think that's really, really beautiful. And even pushing more detail on opportunities centered on employment. Are most of the opportunities going to be centered on employment or well-being? Just more detailing on that overall. I'll love to see. But yeah, I can't wait to see this. This is like a beautiful project, very well laid out. I think overall, just having more of those foundational detailings would be helpful.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Do we have any additional or differing viewpoints? Okay. Well, we will finalize. Go ahead, Mike.
The only thing I wanted to add was, I think it's an amazing project. It's so profound. It's so great. You write so passionately. I want to back this, that's how I feel. So I love it. My only critique is I was a little confused about this relationship between Affirm My Design and Tina's Legacy. And so I just would love to have read a little more clarity, because obviously there's an overlap between these two businesses. One sounds like an organization, one sounds like a business, and there's some overlap between those two. And I would love to hear a little more clarity on it, because Tina's Legacy is brought up and mentioned a lot, but I'm not really sure how that operates with Affirm My Design. And it read to me a little bit like, is Affirm My Design trying to fund Tina's Legacy? And so at that point, I was like, are you building a business or are you trying to support a nonprofit? Because it almost sounded like you're trying to straddle two areas at once. And I just wonder about how that is supposed to financially build the business, but also support the nonprofit at the same time. So that definition of how those two operate would have been really, really great to read.
Thank you for that. Anything else? Okay. We'll finalize comments. We will move to our next applicant. On-ramp 2024 Titzer. And our first reader is Mike.
All right. I think it's the first comment I have is this is direct. It is immediately you tell me what you need and what it's used for, and I appreciate that. It's straight there. I do think you have discounted your artistic practice though in your description. It's so short, so quick that I do think that you could elaborate a lot more on what your practice is, why it's different, why it's special. And how is this medium and the materials that you work with, why is that important to you? How is that your active creation? So I do think you could elaborate a lot more. You've got the word space, use it. Tell me so much about you, build up that support, I think you have a clear long-term goal. Being familiar a little bit with this artistic work, I do understand that, a permanent public artwork would be a nice step forward from the more ephemeral work that you are currently creating. So I do see that as a great way. And I do see that that computer is a link to that. Obviously, this computer is a professional development aid. So it's going to help benefit your career in so many different ways. And I do think you could have gone into all of those. It's not only is it helping you make your website, but it's also helping you do photo editing so that you can make publishings. And then it's also helping you write applications and do grants better. And like it creates access for you to a lot of things. And I think you could explore that access more, because I think that access is really going to help define why this need is important and why it should be supported. I think feasibility wise, let's see, you have a pretty decent budget written out. I think it's pretty clear and seems pretty concise. I will say, as a person who worked in publishing for 12 years, there's so much that goes into making a book, and even more when it's an art book. So I do think you could elaborate on how this book is going to be created, what it's going to look like, what makes it unique and different, what makes it appealing to people and why they want to purchase this book. That was another angle on it, was what happens to this book. Obviously, you create this book and you're going to use it as a promotional material, but it has a life outside of that as well. You know, are you selling it to the general public? Are people collecting this? Is it going in art libraries across the state where people could research your work? You know, there's other ways that this book exists other than just being an aid for you to sell your, you know, it's not just a glossy resume, it's more than that. And so I think you could elaborate a little more on what this book would do for you. I thought your timeline was good. It's a little tight, so I do worry about, you know, just if you have time built in case there's flux time in there, so that when something doesn't go right, or you need to do a third round of proofing on it instead of just 2 rounds. So I do think, you know, hopefully that is considered in your timeline. But overall, for the evaluation, I do think, looking at community engagement, I do think your community engagement is great. It certainly meets the definition, but I do think that there could be a little more based into this two-way exchange. I like to think about community engagement about what are you receiving from it and what are they receiving from it. And so obviously they're going to hear you speak, they're going to look at your book, but really out of that, what are they taking away from it? So I do wonder if maybe the community engagement could be angled a little bit more. You know, are you hitting a certain market with this public artist talk? Are you promoting it to specific groups of people, trying to build small, you know, early start artists? Who is this target audience? I'd like to hear a little more of that in the community engagement. I want the community engagement to feel that it's thought out and not just I'm going to be in the public and the public will be there. So I do think you could explore a little more in the community engagement end, and how funding a computer will actually lead to this community engagement. That was the other thing. I felt that there's a disconnect. There's various steps here, but I'm not feeling that all of these steps are fully connected together. And I think that's really just in verbiage and language. But overall, I think it's a great ask. Artists need computers and artists need these resources. They should be funded. These are basic things that artists need to survive.
For sure. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Ellen.
So yeah, my first concern, I think, would probably be a little redundant to what you said, about just the project being explained clearly as to why the catalog is beneficial to the career. I can definitely see how a laptop is beneficial, and it seems like the laptop is the only thing being purchased. So I was, I guess, a little confused by the project goal being to create a physical catalog, especially because there were no kind of expenses listed about creating that catalog or for the artist talk or, you know, your time building that catalog or anything like that. The only expense listed is the iMac, which is actually more expensive than the grant. So that would be my other point of concern that would need to be addressed, would be that the income is $2,000 and the expenses are $2,300. So you would just need to kind of state where that other $300 is coming from, even if it's just from your own pocket. So yeah, I guess I kind of want to hear more about why the print catalog will be beneficial, especially from looking at the artist website. It seems as though they already have really nice documentation online of their work and their portfolio. So that's already kind of cataloged for them online, probably for free, unless they paid someone to make that website. So yeah, I guess just kind of want to know what the difference would be for the print catalog. And if you were going to print the catalog, I think it might be good to see those expenses as to the printing costs. I think it mentioned it would be printed on demand. So some of it might not be an expense to you, but I would assume that the artist would want copies of their own. So there probably would be some expense to print those copies. And an artist talk and reception was mentioned. If there were going to be any, marketing for that or refreshments, food, anything like that, I think could be listed in the expenses if that truly is the project goal. I think if the project goal were just to purchase a laptop to help with the career, I think that would, be fine as far as the expenses. And then lastly, the community engagement section. I did note that it didn't really seem like there was a known audience for this project, but there was mention of branching out into the realm of public art. So my suggestion would be to look into inviting members of the community that could help you get to that kind of area of your career, such as members of the Public Art Commission in your town, the mayor, or any other political parties that possibly support the arts in your community, or other artists with experience in the public arts within your community. I think those would be kind of the first people, especially the Public Art Commission, if you have one, just to come to that event, hopefully. I think that's all of my additional comments.
Thank you, Ellen. Any other differing viewpoints? Go ahead, Corey.
I just want to encourage, if print on demand is the route that is chosen, and I just want to affirm giving yourself so much grace in the timeline that you created for yourself, and going print on demand, sampling. Like, even if you feel like you got one sample and it was good, do another one. It's that realm of publishing any work can be, it's not always consistent. So, and sampling from different sources of print on demand, because you may have laid it out in one way and you receive it and it's going to look completely different. So giving yourself a lot of grace in that timeline, and just the encouragement of multiple eyes on it. Get yourself a trusted inner circle of beta testers, readers, viewers, and have the room and the time to really make it what you want it to be, especially if you're going to do that print option. And then the community engagement, I had a question of could there be an opportunity on informing community members on how to create their own catalog from what's learned in your process? And that could potentially open up and give you a clearer view on who your audience is.
Thank you for that, Corey. Go ahead, Martha.
Yes, I guess what I want to say has been said, but I want to expand a little bit more. I think a computer, absolutely. Get the computer. Every artist, it's either 50-50 or even 70% promotion to 30% creation of your work. It used to be 50-50, but in this land of social media, so yes, you have to have a computer, all for it. I really do question the wisdom of creating a printable book. I think that's a lot of work. I think you have a robust and impressive large body of work that is very evident in your website already. There's some work that if your ulterior goal is to move into larger public art projects, I didn't see anything that really talk towards that. And there's lots and lots of steps you can do. And maybe you're already doing that. Maybe you're already talking to public artists. But I do think there's many things you could do that should be outlined in going towards that overarching goal. Because personally, I feel like your work is it's beautifully presented. You've got amazing videos, imagery. I really don't know why a book is essential, especially given what Corey was just saying about you can't be sure of the quality of the final product. I do think you could get more, a part of your business plan for this project would be to get more connected to the public art realm, taking workshops about making the jump to public art, finding a mentor, spending time designing sample public art projects, maybe doing some cold call design ideas to public entities. Even if it doesn't go anywhere, you've made some contacts, you have some designs that you could put into your body of work. You could show that. I think that there's lots of ways to connect with the community in that way. And if that's your ulterior goal, even offering to do some kind of pro bono piece that you can actually include in your portfolio, because I know that's the big step, is like showing a public art piece. We just went through that. Someone was doing mostly just 2D sort of letter type designs, and they made the leap into a 3D public art piece. And I know that that's now that they have the design, they're going to have the finished product. It's going to make a huge difference in their portfolio. And having gone through that process, so I think just whatever you can do to try to just push out into that realm. I don't think you need a book. Just saying.
Thank you so much. Anything else?
I want to add, since it's been thrown out and said, I don't think the book is important either, because I think the number one thing that you're trying to sell is the image of your work. And 9 times out of 10, books and publishing don't give the quality that, unless you're spending thousands of dollars on the book. So a lot of times physical catalogs, the reproduction value is not as great as what they're going to see online. So I don't think that there needs to be a lot of stress put on the book, but I do think that the book could be one of the supportive reasons for why you need the computer. That's why I do think you need to invest in looking at what are these public art opportunities? What are other ways that you will utilize this computer to up your game as a professional artist to garner the support? I don't think the book is the number one reason, and I only think it's one of many, many, many reasons.
Yeah, I third that, I suppose. At least in my experience with the Public Art Commission here where I'm from, all proposals or applications to do public art when the city calls for an artist or anything like that is all done digitally through a digital portfolio and images. And I don't think that they would accept a print copy like on their desk or anything. So yeah, I would say probably in your best interest to get the laptop and then maybe spend more of your time and energy on perhaps the costs associated with those applications.
One last thing. Apply to every call you can think of. You will get better at it. That's where you should put your time and energy.
That's where you can use that computer, is to fill out all these calls.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. I hope you're listening and taking notes, because that was a lot of words of wisdom. And we'll work together on that. Finalized comments. And we are a little over an hour in, halfway through. Does anyone need breaks? Okay. We will take a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene at, make it 6 minutes before even, 12:50. And we'll be back to start on ramp 2024 McMurray. I'm ready. Alrighty, we're still live. We'll wait for everybody to join us again before we move forward. Victory, give me a thumbs up when you're ready to go. Thank you. Victory, you ready? I don't want to move. And okay. We'll go ahead and get started. Okay. 5 more applicants. Okay, great, thank you. And we will start with On-Ramp 2024 McMurray. And our first reader is Corey.
This project, first of all, the business plan and vision is so valuable and was beautifully detailed, immaculate. I had a difficult time understanding exactly how this funding would be beneficial to this project, just because it's so zoomed out. It's on a very macro level, and I'd like to see everything just really, really zoomed in on a micro level. The best way I could explain it as I was reading through this was like, I feel like I'm in the room. I need you to bring me to my seat so that I understand what we're doing. And like, I see the full vision. I don't understand the details. And so I need a lot more detailing in this. Like, pick a focus, because there's a lot of directions you could go with a business plan this formulated, but choose one focus and really zone in on that. Because from reading through it, I wasn't sure what direction we were going. So you had me, I'm wandering in a room. I just need you to take me to my seat. And then I know this is where we're at. This is what we're focusing on. Just detailing on if the additional funding, that was another thing. Is the additional funding already required? And if not, how is it going to be acquired? That was really unclear to me. I think that the list of supporters and everyone and the connections that are already deeply involved in the community is beautiful. Pull from that resource. I also really loved the vision for the artist workspace. Maybe that could be just the focus point. Because like I said, as a business plan and a vision, beautiful. There just needs to be a lot more detailing and just a micro zoomed in. And I also understand that my answer could feel also on a macro level, but there's confusion because of that. So finding what do you really want to focus on for this specific funding, and keep this business plan here because it can be used in so many spaces. Like, beautiful, beautiful execution of that. But really, really zone in on a micro level.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your thoughtfulness in your comments too. Martha.
Okay. I do like this idea. It's a terrific project with great long-range goals, having a space that's a performance space as well as a space for creatives to gather. What Corey said, she said it beautifully. I'm in the room, but I really need to get to my seat. I think there's a lot of steps between coming in the door and the seat. I think that there's many, many details that are missing from this application. For one thing, I don't know, is this a nonprofit? Is this a solo venture? I don't know. There's fundraising just talked about, but I don't actually know in what form that's going to take. I know you have a lot of people that you are working with, but I do think you, again, like I said earlier with another applicant, your posse of people. You need to have your advising team that's behind you. You know, a nonprofit has a board, it's like that, or any kind of business has their set of advisors. You absolutely need that. And I think one of the first things they'll say is this is way, way overly ambitious for a first year venture. I think I want more details about each of the productions that you're talking about. What are they? I mean, this is going to happen this year. What are they? How many actors are going to be in each? And then the tangential events that you're going to have. I just want many, many, many more details that this is all going to be put together this year. And the goal of having a brick and mortar venue by 2020, by almost 14 months from now. Love the big vision. Love it. This is just, if you can make this happen in 14 months, that would be incredible. You'd have national news. I would love to see that. I don't want to be a damper on any flames here, but I really see a lot of need for details, because you're going to burn out. This is what's going to happen. You are going to burn out fast if you don't have a lot of other people involved helping you make this. This is a marathon. This isn't a sprint. You got to like take the long view on this. So I want to see a more detailed marketing plan, evidence of past program success. There's nothing really that shows that. Playbills, reviews, quality video. That's another piece that you're really going to need. And maybe what you projected for income is based on past experience, but I have no way of knowing that. There's really no evidence of how many people have come in the past, how many shows you've organized in the past, who, you know, outline of your partners. So all of that kind of detail, and you might have more stability if you went the nonprofit route. It's definitely a longer road, but I think the village would come. You know, it's a longer marathon, but they would come with you. Clearly, you have a lot of support and interest now. So I think basically, in terms of feasibility, that's all of those things that I've just been taking, and starting maybe with the budget, like really fleshing out, making a more realistic budget for, maybe this is like a 5-year budget, and just break it down further. I think you would have to have a robust promotional campaign, and that's not outlined or included in the budget at all. So in terms of community engagement and feedback, they're critical for this thriving, and there's evidence of interest. People have come to openings, but there's no details about that. Like, I just need more details about where these things that are going to happen in a few months, where are they going to happen? Who are you partnering with? Who are the actors? Where are you getting the actors? There's just a lot of specificity that's needed here to make this happen. So I think probably what I would recommend is getting a bunch of advisors together and having a more realistic first year plan for this long range vision. And it's clear the ambition is there. I think you can do it, but I really think you need to have a much more scalable project. So that's what I have to offer.
Thank you, Martha. Before I open the floor, I do want to say, just in general, while the workshop kind of helped our artists, our creatives focus on, and this is to our creatives, focus on your long range goals, ambitions, and having this kind of business plan in order to reach that is crucial and important. Like Corey and Martha both said, what micro thing can help you get to that macro thing. And so, and I don't, also, like Martha said too, we don't want to dampen it. If this, we encourage larger projects. If this $2,000 can be integral to a larger project, by all means, put us in the game. We want to help. But again, can you fund it on your own, and or are there already other funding in place to make this happen? And again, no is never an answer. We can work together, and I'll work with everybody to figure out how we can make this an actual feasible, tangible project. Okay. So having said that, would anybody else like to say anything? Go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah, so the budget was my main concern. I'll just throw that out there, but I'm not gonna add on to that. I think that's been talked about, and it did seem like a budget more for the long-term goal rather than the project. So I think just narrowing your focus. But another thing that I think could be explained more would be just the goal, since it was one of the first things mentioned in your creative career goal was to have one of the top 5 dinner theaters in the Midwest. I would just kind of be interested to know what would make it be in the top 5, like what would make this dinner theater stand out? What exactly are you comparing to be making that statement? If that's something that you really want to be a statement that you make, it might be good to think about exactly how you're going to get to that. What would make this dinner theater be one of the top 5? So maybe just an explanation of those differences. But on a smaller level, the one thing I wanted to point out that I don't know that it was talked about yet was just that the project seems to have started back in March in their timeline. So I don't know how much of that would not qualify for with this grant.
Thank you for that. I think I noted that too. And then another general note, because this has been said again, this should be proposed for the grant period starting in September for a full year to 2025. So any existing projects were not eligible. So yes, you are correct, Ellen.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
My overarching comments were just, I think you're overly ambitious right now. I think, but you need that dream. You've outlined a need. There needs to be supportive dinner theater, supportive of art, creative art, performing arts in Wabash. You've decided that is it. You figured it out. You know a way to solve it. So you have your overarching goals here. You have your big project, but I didn't see that this grant was tied specifically to a defined ask. $2,000 is such a small amount of your operating budget that I didn't understand what this $2,000 was going to do and how would it even make an impact for you. Maybe this $2,000 is just spent on a social media ad campaign to get the ad, get the information out there, start to build the audience. There's a way to you have the big goals. I think you just need to define what your steps are to get there. And I think that will help you define what it is you're asking for and what you need. I also, nowhere in this grant do you talk about the team you're working with. And we need to know who that team is, because you can't be cooking the food, making the stage manager calls and like selling tickets at the same time. So who is this crew? Who are these people? You all have been doing this apparently for a while. So there's a history here and we want to know what that history is. How have your ticket sales been? What are the successes that you've gotten? What are your growing pains you're learning from? Those kinds of things all need to be in your narrative so that you can help guide us with the support. And I didn't feel that the support was in there. I just felt that this was a great idea and you've thought of a wonderful idea that needs to be supported, but I don't feel that it's being supported by you. And I also worry about you doing too much. I don't think you can't do this all yourself. So that was my biggest concern. And then I just think, operating food service and performing arts is very difficult. And so when you talk about retaining memberships and members, you know, you've got to put a lot of emphasis on this restaurant aspect. And so I would just be curious to understand who's running this restaurant for you, who's making the food, who's managing the food, who's overseeing the, you know, the servers and making sure that this is happening. Because in order, you're taking on two tasks now of making your audience happy. You're providing them with performance and art, which is great, and that satisfies one urge, but now you're also giving them food and beverage, and you have to satisfy them totally different in a whole new capacity when it comes to that. And that is really strategic and hard, because there's a lot of dinner theaters out here that we all love, but they have terrible food, and we all talk about how terrible the food is, but we're all like, but it supports a good cause. And you don't want that experience. If you want to be in the top 5 in the country, you've got to have great food that's bringing people in just for the food, and maybe the performance isn't their, you know, their cup of tea, but then there's other people you're bringing them in for the art, and maybe the food's not their tea, but you've got to have both of those perfected if you want to be in the top 5 in the Midwest. So I support this and I want to see this happen, but this is a lot to chew on. That's it.
Thank you so much. Anything else? Okay, we'll finalize comments and we will move to our next applicant. And this is On-Ramp 2024 Warning. And our first reader is Ellen.
Yeah. Well, for one, I really, really liked this proposal, but as far as the things that I took note of for feedback in the goals section, I thought it would be really nice to see more of a concise description of the planned event right in the beginning of the description. I felt it was a little difficult to follow exactly what you were planning until I read the project overall multiple times and the budget and just kind of put 2 and 2 together. It could be summed up something as simple as, like, for this project, I plan to use the funds to host a portrait photo session for those with special needs, followed by a gallery reception featuring some of those photos on display to the community. That's really seems like the gist of what you're trying to do with the project. So if that maybe was just stated right at the beginning, that would help it be easier to follow. Of course, followed by the specific details that you do get into. And another thing in the goals, you mentioned that at the reception, you will identify the need for an adapted playground in the community. And I guess I was just curious as to how you plan to present that during the event, and is the event a call for donations toward the playground? It just seemed kind of like an add-on to your event that I didn't know if it necessarily went with the project or not. Though it's not a bad idea. I guess I would just like to hear more about exactly how you plan to present that. And then as far as feasibility, I thought the budget seemed pretty appropriate. I was mainly concerned with whether or not the in-kind donations have been guaranteed already. So I know there was about $1,500 of in-kind donations from a couple locations for food and for restaurant use. But I don't remember, unless I'm just forgetting, I don't remember if those were mentioned as something you've already acquired. So that would be good if you haven't already to figure that out ahead of time, because that is a huge chunk of your overall budget if you did have to pay for that restaurant and the food. But then food is listed also as a expense in your expenses line for 150 of food. So I don't know if that 150 is on top of the $500 of food of an in-kind donation. That might be good to kind of break down. Or maybe it was just accidentally duplicated in expenses. And then for community engagement, I think it could be mutually beneficial for you and those who you will be photographing to have a pre and or post portrait session survey to identify what people are looking for in a portrait session and what would make them feel most confident and comfortable, because you do mention multiple times that you want these individuals to feel very, very confident and comfortable in their portrait session. But I don't know that there's any feedback listed from the participants in that. I think it's more hopes of what you would like to accomplish, but it might be good to have more of a two-way relationship and figure out ahead of time or after the fact what they would like to happen in those sessions in order for it to make them confident and comfortable. So I think that's my main comment in the community engagement. I think that's everything.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Mike?
So I think at first you come out with a very clear business goal, the expansion of your business into an area that you see as underserved or needed in your location. I think that comes across right away, and I think that's great. But I'm curious about, what is this expansion for you? What does it look like? Is this becoming a full-time job for you? Is this a part-time job? Are you receiving income from this, or is this something you're doing just as a service to benefit the community? I'd like to see that explained a little bit in your narrative up front. And then I was curious also as well, when you talk about your desire for this, do you have any special skills or training, anything, education behind your belt, previous history, things like that help back up your credentials and your credibility for doing this type of work? One of the things I think you should think about for personal advice on this for career goals, I think there are national organizations that accredit photographers for this type of work. So I do think that seeking some of those accreditations would be really good, because some of them do list these artists and photographers on their websites, but also for you, it's a great promotional material to explain to people that you're nationally recognized for being able to do this type of work. And I think that will help lend not only to people feeling secure with you, but knowing that you're knowledgeable and an expert in your field. I do like that you talk about this park a little bit, but if this park is an overall end goal, I want you to lead with that. I want you to say, I want to build this park in my community for this underserved area of the community, and here's how I'm going to do it through my photography sessions. Like, start with that. I love the idea of the park. Maybe the park is an overarching long-term goal of 5 or 10 years, and it's not really specific to this grant. So if it's not, maybe it doesn't need to be mentioned, or it's explained in a passive manner that this is a long-term goal, but not a direct result of this, because I want to feel as if the exhibition of these images is supposed to lead to the development of this park, or is this park just a great goal long-term for you? I do think that displaying the photography and showing these images not only is bringing attention to you, but it's also bringing representation to these families. So I do think that is something you could talk about. What does this mean for these families to be shown in a public manner? Are they receiving something in the manner from this? Because they are your models, and they are being, they're vulnerable. They're being the vulnerable act of art for you. So I do think that there's a little of that I do think you should think about, and maybe it could be addressed in the story, as in, what are they getting out of it? What are they seeking other than just having a beautiful family portrait? And I think that will help reinforce your ask more. I do wonder too about, are you thinking geographically? Are you thinking just local in your community? Are you thinking regional? Are you a photographer that wants to travel nationally and do this? I just kind of think about that angle in your story. And then also, there are a lot of photographers out there that specialize in this area. There are several just in Indianapolis alone that specifically work on this kind of medium. And I research this area quite frequently, because one of my main clients is a healthcare provider. So I do have to work with photographers and artists that are sensible to our needs for special projects. And so there are other people out there that do this. And so I just want you to be able to define yourself on why you're special and why you're different than everyone else. But then also too, reach out to those people in your area. Maybe you can become friends with them. They have advice. They know successes. They know failures. They can share knowledge with you. Generally, photographers tend to be very friendly. So I think you all could communicate, and I think you could seek some advice in these initial steps going forward. And maybe you develop a mentorship out of it. That's some professional advice there. Let's see. I think talking about feasibility, I think you've got it together. I think you do have a nice breakdown. You clearly know your steps towards your success. And I think it sounds like you've done this type of project before, so you know what you're doing. One of the things I don't see in here is I don't see you paying yourself for any of your time or efforts in any of this. I do think you should be rewarded for doing this. We all want to do things out of the kindness of our heart, but you're also trying to develop and grow your business, and you need to make sure you're putting your business first. That's just the first step. You have to be a little bit selfish and pay yourself, which is not selfish. And then is there a target number of families or a target number of prints that you want to exhibit? I wasn't seeing that reflected in the budget, so I wasn't sure how much work this was going to produce in the end. But overall, in my overall evaluation, I think you're pretty clear on that you're doing this for your community and your passion comes through. Community engagement is centered right here in the middle of it. But I just wonder if there's other areas of engagement or results of doing this work that might come through, specifically really devoted to those families that are being photographed. And yeah, the park, if I love the idea of the park, if that's the main goal, lead with it. Because the $2,000, I'm like, is it funding the park or is it funding the art? The art's funding the park. Just clarify that, reiterate it a number of times in there and make it clear. Maybe I'm just not that smart. But I think you have a great project here, and I love it. I just want to see you define yourself and your excellence.
Thank you, Mike. All right, were there any other comments? Go ahead, Martha.
Just to add, I also was confused about, there were three goals outlined, and I think it would have been good to sort of clarify which one is, well, having families with young people with disabilities have more visibility and more access to being visible and more access to a professional photographer. That's one goal. Increase your potential clientele. That seems to be the major goal. And then the other one is about the community awareness campaign for the park. And so just as Mike was saying, just a little more clarity on, or the hierarchy, I guess, of those goals. And along with the park piece, is there a committee working on the park, and are you working with them around finding families or helping helping the exhibition, or just what's your relationship if there is one? And it was unclear to me too whether the portraits were gifts to the families, and whether they might travel, and if they traveled, what relationship the families would have with that. I have seen very successful traveling photos of families of a particular constituency in order to sort of promote awareness around around that population. And so that's something to consider, and also what the relationship, what that would feel like for the families, and just have those conversations. But I think it's very clear goal, and it seems like you already have a ton of experience with this population and are very passionate and committed to this community. So I think you'll that will shine through in the photo sessions that you have.
So thank you so much. Any additional differing comments? Okay. We'll finalize comments. We have 3 more applicants, and we will move forward to On-Ramp 2024 Guzman. Martha, you are our first reader. Martha, you're muted. Yes,
It had to happen, but
ma'am.
happy to offer that to the session. So this would allow the artist to create a new body of work and to get their ongoing new series Next to Myself within the local community. And a goal is to have a solo exhibit. And the work here is stunning. I know, incredibly unique. Either you're unique or you're not unique, but incredibly unique. And I love that she's working to be more connected to the Latinx community with her work. I think the goals are very clear. One minor point around the narrative is she talks about the importance of having a solo show. But they've had several exhibits around the country, solo exhibits around the country. So does that mean so this particular exhibit, at a larger facility in their own community, sorry about that. Or having 5 to 10 solo shows, this is, just sort of clarifying that because they already do have it's maybe nitpicky, but they already do have solo shows under their belt. Getting the money to actually create the work, very clear. Small comment on the budget also, printing exhibition promo cards, $50. I don't think that's gonna do it unless it's being shared with the venue. Designing, I don't know how many they wanna produce, but that seems like a small, too small amount. I do think that they're very lucky that they've had that experience in Baltimore with Creative Alliance on community engagement and to carrying that forward. It's great that they're having that. They've had that early on in their career. If they want to do that one-on-one community engagement with the work. And it sounds like they're going to continue that with this exhibit, wherever it lands. So I don't have anything more really to say. I just thought that they're well on their way to being a very successful visual artist and have doing a great job of connecting with community nationally to make that happen.
Thank you, Martha. Corey.
Again, I retweet everything that Martha just said, as well as an encouragement for my biggest question was, where is a space already either thought of or chosen for this solo exhibition? And my encouragement is for them to reach out to FAR, which is 4th and Rogers in Bloomington. They are an incredible space that really loves to promote solo exhibitions as well as community engagement, and they'll plug you in for so many events that they do, whether it's a solo exhibition or a group exhibition. They're a space that I worked with a lot during my time in Bloomington. They also are already connected to a lot of groups within the Latinx community, so they could probably plug you in with organizations, which was one of my notes of just consider connecting with those organizations on a local scale. Yeah, it's beautiful. The national recognition, the national relationships that are already there. I know that Bloomington, for people of color, can be a difficult space to navigate. So plugging into those spaces like FAR, also Girls Rock Bloomington, their founder and organization is really great and will could probably create pathways locally that you could even showcase your work, possibly work with younger students as well, and families of your community and within communities that you want to connect with more. But yeah, those were just my additional thoughts and notes.
Awesome, thank you so much. Do we have any differing viewpoints? Go ahead.
Not so much differing, but just adding on to what Corey just mentioned about the exhibition spaces. Is I would just say, I know there's a few galleries mentioned, and I don't know if it was stated or not, whether the artist had already reached out to those venues to see sort of what the process is like for getting a solo exhibition there, because at least at the gallery that I work at, we accept proposals once a year. It takes a few months to decide on which proposals are accepted, and then those accepted ones would not take place for at least 1 year from acceptance. So depending on the gallery and like how far out they book their exhibitions or what sort of professional level they're on, that could not fall within the grant period. So that would be like the first thing that I would start reaching out and finding a venue that would be feasible for that timeline.
Awesome, thank you. Anything else?
The things that I would add on to that is just in the community engagement aspect. You talk about art administrators and artists, and then there's the viewers, but I also wonder if there's more audiences that could be identified. Also, like when do curators and people come in to participate in the community engagement that you're describing here? When are they coming in? How are they, like, are they coming in before the art's made? Are they coming in after the art's made? Like there's some engagement there that could be two-way. If these curators are visiting your studio while you're making the work, then obviously that feedback is going to filter into the art in some way, probably. So I think there's angles and areas of community engagement that you're not addressing in that section that I think could be flushed out further. And then a lot of times, we all throw the word community around constantly. I throw it around a lot in my work, but what does community mean when you say community? Just be thoughtful in that manner of what is community, because there's so many ways that community can be a thing. So I would just like a little more definition in that, because I just feel like some of this engagement just sort of feels like, well, I'll put it on display and the community will see it and they'll interact with it. Well, what is that engagement, and is it meaningful to them, and how is it meaningful? Those are just sort of the things I would look at there. Yeah, and my last comment is just, very beginning, you talk about a financially independent visual artist, and what is that? I'd like to understand a little bit more for you. What does that look like? What is your work like and happy home balance? Like, what is that to you when you say independently, financially independent visual artist? What does that look like, and how does this show support you getting to that goal? I'd like to hear a little more of that. That's it.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, we will finalize comments and move to our last two applicants. Our first of the two is on-ramp 2024 Heskett, with our first reader being Mike.
Sorry, it's taking me a second to get to my notes. Overall, I thought it was a very clear summary. I know what you want to do with the funding and how it will benefit you. In your main creative work, you talk a little about your classes and teaching that you will offer. And since this is a result of the funding, since that will be a result of the funding, but are you already teaching? I want to hear a little bit about that. If you are, like a little bit about your experience and the history and how this will evolve because of the funding. I do think you're extremely knowledgeable and very passionate about what it is you do and how you want to do it. I think you have a great long-term goal. I think you've thought this out, and I think you have a clear vision of what it is inside your head. I believe you when you write. So I think you've done it very successful in your project overview. You obviously know how you want to grow your business. Now, feasibility, I don't see you paying yourself for the teaching and doing all this work. So I do think that you could reevaluate the budget a little bit and think about your time and being considerate to yourself. You deserve it. You're doing all of this work. Community engagement wise, I think you're doing community engagement already. And I think you're actually exploring that area even further as well, because you want to build this brick and mortar space and you want to start having classes, which then will develop its own community itself that revolves around the building and no longer revolves around you. So I do think that you're developing that and you see that need. I do think if you have this need in your city or your area, I do think that could filter into your narrative on why this creative outlet exists and why it's needed in your community. Maybe there aren't any other artist studios, and so this is a need for the city, or maybe there are several other artist studios, but there isn't one for glass. Like, I do think there's a couple of angles where you could really stress on the importance of why you need to exist in this space outside of yourself. But I also think that business-wise, I think you've got a great model, because not only would you be generating revenue and income from the classes you're teaching, but also you want to start making pre-cut glass. So I do think you've defined another need in your area for other artists. So you have this material that then will become a repeat, hopefully. So there hopefully is generative income coming from that once it starts to kick off. So I think you initially have defined your big scope, and I think you've created several steps to lead towards that. There's probably some tweaking here and there that could happen with some of those steps, but overall, I think you have a great defined ask, and I think you have a tangible product here for consideration.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Ellen?
Yeah, so the main things that I had down for this proposal were that, one, I do think that teaching the workshops is a great first step towards owning the brick and mortar. I think it was a good project goal versus overall goal, and they seem to work very well together. And you mentioned in the goals section that like quite a few fun ideas and options for class projects, which, taking it to the community engagement section, I thought that could be a fun pre-class survey to sort of see what your audience would be interested in learning, since I don't know that was mentioned later on. As far as the feasibility, I would just say that since you're planning to teach workshops and supply pre-cut shapes, though they are very smart options to supplement your income as an artist, I would definitely suggest to make sure you allow time for yourself to create your own work as well, especially if the ultimate goal is to have a brick and mortar location where you're selling your work. I could see you easily getting swamped with all of, the disposable income of this. So I would say if you can prioritize time within all of this to be generating stock for your brick and mortar, possibly of your own work, or just keeping your own passion, because that's really easy to lose when monetization comes into the picture. And as far as the budget, I think that you had some income listed for 4 signups, which I would say, just since you can't really guarantee that ahead of time, that would need to be listed as your own personal contribution. Or you could easily take that off and also take off $720 worth of expenses. So it looks like a lot of your expenses going into the materials. And if you only have one class coming up and only have the ability to host 4 students, you may just want to go light on materials until you start generating those signups for more classes. And I would say that you probably will really want to look into free or very affordable venues for these workshops, since it looks like your payment to the location is $300 and you're only going to be making $720 period before losing that $300. So that would be concern. I would say to look into places like community centers, assisted living, nonprofits, art centers. There's probably a lot of venues around town that would be open to hosting a workshop like this as an in-kind donation. And that'll at least help you right off the bat, possibly purchase materials to be able to host more than 4 students at a time. And I didn't have any notes as far as community engagement. I thought seems like you're doing well networking with peers and making connections with mentors in the community. So good job there.
Awesome, thank you. Any additional or differing comments? Go ahead, Martha.
Just want to add that, yeah, clear, well thought out proposal. My question is if you're going to use the Wazer at Mad Jack's, that's really smart and enterprising to start out with that. But if you're going to be a supplier also, is that a sustainable model? And I have no idea how much that machine costs, probably like $20,000 or something, or $80,000, I don't know. But if it is beyond your reach for even within 5 years, so then maybe develop some kind of relationship with Mad Jack's where you have some kind of long-term residency there or something like that to help mitigate the costs of membership for you. And the only other thing I would say, echo on what Ellen was saying about, I think if you're willing to travel, I know that, you know, you've got the oven, you've got the supplies and everything, but if you're willing to travel, I think there would be, you know, even 2-3 hours out, there would be an audience for this in a lot of those places that Ellen was mentioning, libraries, community centers, etc. And that could get your name out more as well.
Awesome, thank you. Anything else? Alrighty, we'll save comments and move to our last applicant. And that is on-ramp 2024. I went back 3 years. Jeez. 2024, Ross-Barnhizer. And our first reader is Corey.
First and foremost, I love with this project that it's written from the lens of care and collective care. As a homesteader myself, it is no easy task. So this is really beautifully written, and I appreciate that. I love that the goal is clear. Bathroom facilities needed in order to do a vision like this. And the connection as to why it's needed is present and helpful for supporting the goal. I think there's a great explanation of the plan and materials and the support that's needed, as well as a realistic timeline with that built-in support of having somebody that's handy. And the main question I had was if there would be any zoning or permitting laws or rules that may need to be researched before beginning this. That's the biggest thing that stuck out to me, is being prepared for any surprises when it comes to building, structuring, plumbing, all of the things that go along with new builds, reconstructions, renovations. Overall, really well formulated and aligned with the overall mission. I really love that this project is for a bigger vision, but it's really zoned in on what the need is and how it's going to be executed.
Thank you. Martha?
So I'll retweet Corey. Yes, that it's creating a creative and retreat space for others in addition to her own family. And that you're expanding, diversifying your family income streams to support your ability to continue making your own work. That's really, really smart, using the assets that you have and leveraging them. It would be useful to know, just more of the specifics of the space, like how many cabins there are, how many people or classes or events that you plan on having or have had there, and what that would be needed to achieve fiscal sustainability. I think that the timeline, the budget, everything makes sense, supports long range goal. One of the things that I want to bring up is just that this might be a community building opportunity that you didn't really talk about. Yes, you need skilled workers, you have your intentional crew, but are there other ways that you could bring in the community to help do, like, design a stone pathway or paint the exterior in certain fun ways or the interior in certain fun ways? And then you're developing more ownership from the community. You feed them and it just builds good energy. So that's a piece that I think is worth talking about. And that's the only other thing I wanted to add.
Thank you, Martha. Did we have any additional or differing comments? Okay. Awesome. Go ahead, Mike.
My comments were just in the initial narrative at the beginning. I was interested if you are currently performing retreats. Currently, what do those look like? What are the results? Are there any testimonies? Is there any evidence and support here that helps build why this is vital to this location and why we need this here? Just those supporting materials will just help build a stronger case here for why you need this and why it's needed here. I wanted that. I needed that in there. I wanted to hear a little bit about what people are getting from here and what they're learning, even though that's not necessarily exactly tied to the ask. I do think it's vital for your support. In the way of feasibility, my number one biggest concern is that you do not have a contingency here. And this is construction. And construction is always going to have major unforeseen expenses. So I just wanted to see that there's a little bit of a buffer here and support so that you're not financially draining yourself or putting anything at risk in order to accomplish this goal, because the goal of this is to just keep building you better and better. So I would think about a contingency or a way that you could build in some kind of surplus money for crazy things that you won't foresee happening, that will have to happen in order to build this support. But outside of that, I think the community engagement is great. And I think, again, those testimonials from people that have received services from you, that's just going to reiterate this community engagement, reinforce why this is vital and needed, and it will all just perfectly tie it together like a bow. That's it.
Thank you. All righty. Well, that's has completed our cohort panel discussion for this year's this day of panels. I will say very quickly, next steps for our creatives and our entrepreneurs is that today's panel was mostly for mentorship suggestions, but from the suggestions that we received today, I will determine what is required for you to modify, and you'll receive that information along with a contract for the funding, with any need for meetings, discussions, all of that jazz, for us to discuss your project a bit further. And that will come in a couple weeks, probably a week or two. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we are done for today. If my panelists can stay on for just a minute, we will end our live stream.